Halloween Sucks. This awesome Halloween story is written by Volmer. So grab your coffee, sit back and enjoy the show. I've been working as a janitor at a high school in a small town in Colorado for several years now. It's Thursday, October 31st, which means a longer shift for me, as it does every year. In our town, everyone knows each other, and almost everyone who lives here has attended this high school or will attend it someday. Because of this, we have a tradition of celebrating Halloween here until dark, with the principal usually announcing the end of the event around 10 in the evening. Until then, children in costumes gather here with their parents and grandparents, and there is entertainment for everyone. For example, in the computer lab we project horror movies, and in the art room younger kids can paint their faces, while outside there's a contest for the best costume. It's always a beautiful day for us, or at least my colleagues and I agree that Halloween is celebrated best at our school. But last year, the day was marred by a tragic event. The police had to be called because a child went missing and it still hasn't been found. The only trace left behind was a notebook with the child's name on it, and on every page was scrawled in large letters, "Halloween Sucks." It was found in the cafeteria, on one of the tables covered with candy, and I discovered it while cleaning up after the event, before anyone even realized the child was missing. So I handed the notebook over to the vice principal, thinking some boy had simply left it behind. The next morning, however, the boy's mother called the principal, saying her child hadn't come home. Months of searching and constant police questioning followed, but they never found the boy. When friends were questioned, they claimed not to have seen him at the celebration, saying his mother was the last person to see him when she brought him there. To this day, it's unclear whether the notebook was even his. The name matched, but according to his mother, the boy would never have written such a thing. She insisted her son hadn't taken any notebook to the celebration. He had only dressed up and held a bag for candy. And those words. According to his mother, he had always loved Halloween and had looked forward to dressing up as Darth Vader and stuffing himself with chocolate and candy. Tonight the event ended around 11:30, and of course I was responsible for cleaning the entire school by the next day, as classes were resuming. But the principal usually rewards me financially, and a little extra money always helps. I figured I wouldn't get home until after midnight, so I got straight to work once everyone had left. The school has only one floor above ground, and 8 classrooms were used for the celebration today. Usually I just have to pick up a few candy wrappers and other trash that the kids left behind. I always start with the upper floor, where I need to rearrange desks and chairs, which are usually set up in circles so everyone can see each other. As I climbed the stairs, I was struck by the silence that filled the building. Normally I would hear at least the faint sounds of people outside, maybe cars, but there was nothing, only my own breathing. I stood there for a moment looking down the dark hallway, shrouded in darkness because the principal always turns off all the lights when he leaves. I forced myself to move, went to the switch and turned on the lights, which flooded the hallway with a pale yellow glow. Now I could at least hear the hum of the bulbs and I stopped shaking with fear. I told myself I couldn't be this paranoid just because it was Halloween and exactly a year since the child had gone missing. That didn't make tonight any different. I set to work, moving from room to room, each marked by a piece of tape on the door with a description of the activities held there. I cleaned 5 rooms, and after about 45 minutes I was ready to return to the ground floor. But first I took a short break in my office. I turned on the fan because even though the work isn't physically demanding, I'm nearing 60 and was sweating like crazy. I also turned on the radio, tuning it to the Fox station, where they were playing Smoke on the Water by Deep Purple. I stared at the rotating fan, thinking about last year's tragic event. I was really afraid that something like that might happen again. The image of that grieving mother, looking at her missing child's photo, praying to God for help that never came, worn down by endless questions from the detective, filled me with sorrow and sympathy. When the digital clock blinked to 11:30 p.m., I decided that I had done enough brooding. I left my office, heading down the hall to the staircase. The further I went down, the more I regretted forgetting my flashlight. The light from the upper floor didn't reach down here, so when I reached the ground floor, I had to feel along the wall for the switch. When I finally found it and turned on the lights, I was stunned by what I saw. Across from me were the double doors to the school library, a place students rarely entered, and on them was a message that made my skin crawl. In red paint, the words "Halloween sucks" were written, just as they had been in the missing boy's notebook. I called out, "Hello, is anyone here?" But only my voice echoed back, bouncing off the walls as if I were in a dark, deep cave. Though it scared me, I brushed it off as a tasteless prank by some bored student who wanted to make light of something others would mourn. I decided to ignore this prank and headed into the library to clean up. Today, we had set up a drawing station there where kids could paint scary monsters, and crayons and papers were scattered all over the floor. I pulled open the door, once again enveloped by the pitch-black darkness. So I had to turn on the lights again. And then, my heart nearly stopped. At the end of the hallway lined with bookshelves, a small boy stood motionless. He was the same boy whose missing posters were pinned to every lamppost, reading, "Missing." But instead of eyes, he had two large black hollows, and his skin was an eerie ashen color. But his red and white striped shirt and dark, messy hair left no doubt. It was the boy no one had seen in a year. For a moment, we just stared at each other. I, barely able to breathe from fear, was frozen in place. Then suddenly the boy began to scream, a piercing, deafening sound. Even with my hands clamped over my ears, my head throbbed with pain. A bulb in one of the overhead lamps even shattered, and books began to fall from the shelves as if he had conjured a hurricane aimed directly at me. A sheet of paper plastered itself to my face, and when I peeled it away, the phrase, "Halloween sucks," stared back at me. I turned toward the door, but it was locked. I clawed at it, shouting, but when I turned back, the boy was inches from my face. Blood poured from his eye sockets, and I thought this was the end. I closed my eyes, tears streaming down my face, and whispered a final prayer. Then when I opened my eyes, I was back in my office. I glanced at the clock. It read 11:30 p.m. again. Was it just a dream? It seemed like a silly question given that I was back in the same place at the same time as before, but it had felt so real. When I dream, I know things around me aren't real. But when I wake up, I'm always aware of what was just a dream and what wasn't. But now it felt as if I had instantly been transported from one place to another. I got up, now certain I was fully awake, and went back down to the ground floor. But one thing didn't add up: the lights were on. Could the principal have left some on? There was no longer any sign on the library door, thankfully, so I went inside and tidied up what I could. There were just a few crayons on the floor around a table where the kids had been drawing. Now only the cafeteria remained, and then I could go home for some much-needed sleep. Suddenly a flood of emotions washed over me. I had never heard of anything like this before, and I've lived in this town my entire life. Yet there was something else that caught my attention. There was no basement in our school, and since I've been the janitor here for over 30 years, I know that for a fact, unless there was one in the past. I wondered who I could talk to about this. The oldest person I knew was the father of the current principal, who had taken over the role about 5 years ago. The old man, now 75, lived nearby with his wife, who used to be a teacher before she retired. I decided I'd visit him the next morning. It was already late, and I didn't want to ruin anyone's Friday night. That night I had nightmares again. I dreamed about the basement where William was hanging in the center, surrounded by the bodies of his victims. He looked straight at me, and I couldn't even turn my head. Blood dripped from his mouth, twisted in a grin, and trailed down his ankles, pooling on the ground. It was a horrifying sight. I tried to move, to run, but it was impossible. I woke up shortly after midnight, my heart racing as it often does when a nightmare jolts you awake. I went to make myself some tea to calm down. The image of that grinning monster, relishing the sight of his victims, made it hard to shake the thought of the missing boy. I finished my tea and lay down again. No more nightmares, please. At 8 the next morning, I got into my car and drove to the former principal's house. He invited me in and we sat down in the living room while his wife made tea. I began asking him about the case of William Oldfield and told him everything I had learned. For a moment he just looked at me in disbelief, then with a contemplative expression as if trying to figure out where to start. Finally he began in a quiet, almost hoarse voice. The case happened a long time ago, long before I was born. I only know from my grandfather that it was a huge tragedy back then. My grandfather was about 16 at the time, and he said they closed the school for a month and left everything to the police. As you mentioned, they found 12 dead children and the murderer, William Oldfield. But they also found something else, something the newspapers didn't write about because it bordered on the supernatural, and even I don't know if I can believe what my grandfather told me. He paused, sipped his tea, and continued. They found his signed notebook where, as you probably guessed, Halloween sucks was scrawled in large letters. But there was something else too, a message, which my grandfather tore from the notebook and kept. Before he died, he gave it to me. Wait here, I think I have it somewhere. He got up from the sofa and walked into the next room. It didn't take long before he returned, holding a piece of paper so old it looked ready to fall apart. He handed it to me to read William Oldfield's message to future generations. Halloween sucks. This tradition disgusts me. You dress children in the costumes of creatures that once instilled fear, but now it's all a mockery. Instead of showing respect to the spirits among us, spirits with immense power, you imitate them with white sheets and cut out eye holes. To show you the true power of the elder spirits, I will kill myself to become one. If you continue to celebrate Halloween as a masquerade ball, more people will die. The memory of the dead must be honored. William Oldfield. After reading it, something didn't sit right. If this is connected to the children going missing, why is it happening only now? I asked, though I didn't expect the old man who barely remembered his grandfather's stories to have an answer. I have no idea. But it could be related to the basement entrance, which was blocked and supposedly lies somewhere beneath the floorboards of the current library. When Halloween was celebrated again a year later, people relaxed, thinking their children were safe, and ignored this message from that mad student. This left me deeply unsettled. I didn't know if this message was the reason children were disappearing, or why it would be happening now. Since it was Saturday and the school was empty, I decided to head there myself. I wanted to find that basement, even if it meant discovering just the smallest clue. I drove to the school, unlocked the gates, and made my way to the library. The silence was deafening. The soundproof walls ensured students wouldn't be disturbed while they studied. I walked through the shelves, constantly looking down to see if I could spot any loose floorboards. After about 10 minutes, I found one in the far left corner. I slid my hand into the gap between the board and the wall and pulled hard. The board snapped off, revealing a bit of a hatch that must have led to that basement. I pried off 3 more boards until the hatch was fully uncovered. It was gray, likely made of aluminum, with a handle that I pulled toward me, revealing a ladder descending into darkness. Realizing it was pitch black down there, I went back to my closet to fetch a flashlight. I climbed down the ladder and the stench was overwhelming, like the smell of a dirty diaper. The basement wasn't as deep as it had seemed. After a few rungs, I reached the concrete floor. I shone my flashlight to the left and my stomach churned. Human bones lay scattered everywhere as I had somehow expected. In the middle of it all was a rope, the one William Oldfield had hung himself with. But instead of finding his skeleton hanging there, all that remained was an empty noose. I moved closer to the rope, and when I shone the flashlight on the ground, I saw scratch marks leading up the wall as if someone had tried to claw their way up. At the end of the marks was a tiny hole in the wall, barely large enough for a soul to pass through. In that moment, a chilling realization hit me. William must have been trying to escape all this time, and he had finally succeeded a year ago. Could this really be true? I wondered. No, it can't be. But it was. Deep down, I knew William Oldfield's spirit was behind the missing children. He had somehow escaped and started killing on Halloween again. On Monday, I couldn't keep this to myself any longer. I told the principal everything. He looked as disturbed as I had felt when I read William's message. I urged him to come with me to the basement to see for himself. He was surprised when I mentioned there was a basement, but we took the flashlight and headed to the library together. The hatch was still open. I led the way down the ladder, and the principal followed. I aimed the flashlight to show him the horror, and we both froze. Standing before us was the same boy I had seen in my dream that first night in the library. He had the same pitch-black eyes and the same shirt, and he was just smiling at us. "What do you want from us?" was all I could manage to say. He continued smiling before finally responding in a soft, childlike voice. "William warned you. William didn't want Halloween. You must listen to William. He can kill you." There was a moment of silence before he added something that forever changed the town. "Cancel Halloween. Halloween sucks. Tell everyone to stop celebrating it. Then William won't kill." The principal and I exchanged a terrified glance, and when we looked back, William was gone. Since that day, Halloween is no longer celebrated in our town, and if any family dares to set a jack-o'-lantern outside by morning, no one hears from them again. Hey family, a very big thank you to Volmer for allowing me to narrate such an awesome tale. Be sure to check out their Creepypasta fandom profile for more of their awesome works. If you would like to support us and make a donation, I'd be very much appreciative. I do have PayPal and a Buy Me a Coffee account. Be sure to also check out our merch store. There are plenty of items and designs to choose from. If you enjoyed this video, then why not check out the next one, here, on the right-hand side. You can also follow us. All my socials and all my other links are contained within the Linktree link below. Take care, everyone, and I hope you all have a wonderful and peaceful night. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness is not.